Do you know of someone who ruined their life in just a matter of minutes? If so, how did they do it? Guy I went to high school with was kicked out of his college ROTC and moved back home. After some time of living at home, his dad walked into his bedroom and went off about him being a lazier and needing to do something with his life. He decided he was going to take his gun and rob a bank. Supposedly the gun wasn't loaded, but he did successfully rob the bank and get away. Some time went by, he moved out of his parents' house and started living it up. He eventually told someone he trusted. That person turned him in. He was arrested and charged. He got a count for every person who was in the bank because he had a gun. You can decide if he ruined his life when he decided to rob the bank or when he decided to tell someone that he did it. If you get away with a crime, you never speak of it. I could never succeed at being a criminal. Not because I couldn't do the things and make a solid effort to get away with it, but because I'm far too anxious and would always be tweaking about getting caught. Some guy tried to come into my nightclub when he was clearly too drunk. I made the call to not let him in, so he starts shouting at me and tries to aggressively walk up to me. I put my hands up in defense and he's pushing back against me. Then the dude lunged at my boss next to me, so my boss shoves him. The guy tumbles backwards and slams the back of his head on a curb. Paralyzed from the neck down forever. Tried to take my boss to court for $15 million, but the camera showed this guy instigating everything. How did your boss take it? I can't imagine it was easy for him. I think the whole legal process lasted like 8 months. Dude was shitting bricks constantly from stress. It actually made it harder for us to do our job as bouncers in a college town because my boss was so paranoid about something like this happening again. It's why as a bouncer I don't shove. I wrap people up or get a firm grip on the chest of their shirt. I've purposefully swept out people's legs, but I've been able to keep them from slamming full force into the ground. I used to work as a bartender at a college bar in New York City over a decade ago. At the time I smoked cigarettes and I would typically go out front to have a smoke, so I could also people watch. I learned very quickly that club/bar bouncers and security, especially in college towns, deal with so much wildness literally every night. Things were a lot different back then. I couldn't imagine doing that now. Guy I went to high school was at a bar. Spoke to a girl at the bar. She said she had a boyfriend. He said okay and left it alone. Boyfriend was not impressed. Waited for him to go out for a smoke and sucker punched him. Fell, hit his head and died. So pointless. My friend's boyfriend shot a dude 9 times in the face for talking to his girl at the bar. I saw the video of it. He towered over the other guy and cold beat him in a fight, but was a P and shot him square in the face. 9 times. He had a 2-year-old daughter. This is one of the reasons why you aren't even legally allowed to conceal carry into a bar. When some people drink they get freaking stupid and overly confrontational. Joke adjoining shaggy sink handle waiting sheet rinse coordinated numerous. Third-hand story from a former co-worker. One of the other Marines at the base where he was stationed in the 90s stole plastic explosives from the test range and tried to sell them at a bar that was literally line of sight from the base. The first person to show any interest was an NSYS officer. That guy might still be in Leavenworth. Shortest NSYS episode ever. Dun scene opens. Marine walks into a bar. Marine, hey, want to buy these explosives? NSYS officer, you're under arrest. Dun credits roll. He was gonna be the one to put our dinky little private school on the map by going to the NFL as a kicker. He fell off a picnic table that was being pulled behind a pickup truck at a party. Pasture surfing. By the time I saw him again a year later he could almost feed himself without assistance. I've seen people pasture surfing, and it just seems like a guaranteed head injury every time. Country miners kill themselves like Disney lemmings. A while back we had 3 years in a row where kids were driving their ads through rusty barbed wire fences which would chainsaw their head most of the way off. My cousin died by trash compactor while playing a game of starting it and seeing who could get out in time. When I was in my early 20s I worked as an energy worker in field service. One of my really close friends was someone who I was on calls with regularly. A project lead pressured both of us to work on equipment we weren't qualified or trained to work on, and we unfortunately relented. We were halfway done with the task and I walked out to the truck to grab water bottles. Halfway to the truck I hear a giant buzz, then a huge bang, then screaming. By the time I get back to the generator room, he's fully on fire. The cabinet had arc blasted, and he had been right in the way. By the time I got our fire blanket from the truck he was basically fully engulfed. I was able to put him out and get him into as much of a recovery position as I could, and then I called our shop to get them to organize rescue to our location. He somehow survived 80-90% second and third degree burns, but coded so many times he ended up with severe brain damage from oxygen deprivation. He lost his eyes, his sense of smell and taste, and much of his sense of touch. I think he lost his hearing too from the noise of it too. He's in a vegetative state in a full-time care facility now. I had frequent nightmares for years about it. The thing that stuck with me the most was, since the arc blast had hit him basically right in the face, it basically boiled his skin off. I ran in and saw him ripping large pieces of his face off while he tried to bat the flames off. The smell and sight of that never goes away. Cousin dove into the shallow end of the pool while drinking. Paralyzed, and life was never the same. My great aunt also dove into a pool's shallow end and broke her neck as a teen, I think. Also paralyzed for most of her life, living into her 70s. She had a decent life for what happened, but definitely lost a lot of opportunities. When I was in college I saw a girl on Molly do that. Thankfully, she wasn't paralyzed, but I think she did break her neck or something equally as serious, because I remember her having to shave her head for some reason. She could have had a brain bleed or increased intracranial pressure. The brain is swelling against the skull. They shaved her head so they could do a quick head surgery to stop the bleeding or give the brain more space to be swollen. I had a good friend do that very thing. Luckily he realized what he'd done. He walked to the shallow end and stepped out of the pool while holding his head up with his hands, walked over to the lifeguard and explained what he did. He spent the next 6 months with his head in a cage, bolted to his skull at 4 locations. He missed out on his senior year of football. He was a damned good lineman. Childhood friend thought his wife was cheating on him with one of her coworkers. So he goes to the guy's house, waits for him to get off work, and jumps him with a metal bar thing. Left him laying with permanent brain damage. Drove down to some old, abandoned buildings by the docks and ended it. They had a kid and another on the way. She wasn't cheating on him. Dude had major insecurities. I've had coworkers who were this severely paranoiac and delusional. Claimed I was a Chinese communist spy trying to give the Reds his info so they could kill him, and management did nothing about it, and it's just terrifying. Like they could snap, and there's nothing you can do because they've convinced themselves you're the evil one who has to be taken out. Terrifying. You don't know what someone is capable of. We knew this guy wasn't in a great headspace, but no one saw this coming. A neighbor, his wife and his friend, and friend's wife, were at the neighbor's house. The two men both got into arguments with their wives and decided to go out drinking down the street. A few hours later I'm woken up by my sister banging on my bedroom door. I was staying with them at the time because a car crashed doing probably 80 and a 25 miles per hour right next to our home. I jumped out of bed and got outside to see the neighbor's car crashed into a tree and 2 men trapped inside. The tree the car hit stopped them from ramming into another neighbor's house, and they hit it so hard. The battery was in the street after ours. Their car caught fire, and we had to watch them burn to death. Still see it and smell it every now and then when trying to sleep. I had never met the wife, so I had no idea who she was when she came up and asked me what happened. So I said some guy crashed his car. She took off running after she recognized the car. Can't believe I told her that her husband died so bluntly. A guy my mom had gone on a couple of dates with was distraught when she broke it off with him. The reason being his alcoholism. She was raised by a drunk and didn't want her kids exposed to it. He was so upset that he decided to go to his sister's house a few miles away to drown his sorrows. In his drunken state, he decided to drive back to our apartment and begged my mom to take him back. On his way there, he hit a family of 3 with his pickup truck. The parents survived, but the 5-year-old little boy was killed. I don't remember the guy really. Steve something I'm pretty sure. But I'll never forget that little boy. I never met. His name was Alex Bishop. and he died in Kent, Washington. This happened in 1992, and I still think of him and his parents suffering fairly often. I was 13, and it traumatized me, knowing that I had met someone who killed a baby. The post did 10 years in prison for vehicular homicide. Apparently he also had a 5-year-old son. I openly talk to and about anyone who is willing to risk others around them by driving under the influence. I decided to look up the cassettes archive. seattletime.com/archive/1999-0403/2,953,038/rap sheet. As long as the road he drives, I just want to cry. This could have been prevented. And apparently he didn't even do 10 years. That poor baby and his family. 32 years ago, and my heart still aches for them. I had a friend who got into his car drunk with 5 other people, flipped the car, and killed one of the passengers. He went from being this charming, good-looking, likable guy to a shut-in, and was seen as a monster to a lot of people in the community. He ended up committing suicide about a year after the accident. He was seriously broken about what had happened. I've done background checks as part of my job, and it's honestly surprising how many people have DUIs. We really don't take them seriously enough as a country, considering how dangerous they are. It's terrible when people are ostracized. But the other end looks even worse. I went to high school with a girl who strayed into oncoming traffic after a party. It killed the other girl in the car with her and broke her leg. Everyone acted like she was some sort of returning hero who had just been in a random accident, and it was just so sad her friend had died. Like no one was at fault. Ireland used to be a drink-drive country. Rural population. Only way to socialize and get home in the 80s/90s. Deaths were out of control, so in fairness the government clamped down. Huge advertising campaigns. Heavy sentences with increasingly low limit thresholds. It's incredibly frowned upon now, and people often lose their license for years and often their jobs. When I lived in America, it was like time traveling. One guy told me he had multiple DUIs previously and was back driving again. That Aussie kid who, on a dare, ate a slug that had a parasite, developed an early brain infection, ended up in a coma for a year, woke up paralyzed, then passed away in 2018. He was only 19 when it happened. There was also the scientist who spilled a drop of mercury on her hand and died in a coma sometime later. There was no antidote to the type of mercury she had been experimenting with. Yes, dimethylmercury. She spilled it on her gloved hand. Security company. This happened before I worked there, but some co-workers told me the story. Guy was doing well at his job. Got lots of promotions. On his way to lieutenant, but was too into his job and got a police scanner that he would listen to. One day, just as he was getting off work, a high-speed chase went by. He hopped in his personal vehicle with his firearm, got to the front of the chase, blocked the suspect in, and pulled his gun. Suddenly the cops were much more interested in the crazy guy with the gun. Got hit with several felony charges. When you give paramilitary ranks to security workers, you're encouraging this kind of delusion. Pretty successful woman at a company I worked got drunk, took an Uber home from a party, realized she left the keys to her apartment behind, so she decided to climb up to her second-story balcony to get her spare set. She slipped, paralyzed herself, couldn't work for a year, racked up ridiculous medical debt, and the pandemic left her position useless, so she was let go. Oh man. Something similar happened to my neighbor in high school. We lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building, and she had been drinking at a party and forgot her keys. Decided to try and climb from the stairwell across to her balcony to try and sneak in, and fell. She broke her arms/wrists, legs, and messed something up in her back, I think. I remember her mom knocking on our door the next morning to ask if we'd heard any of it. She spent her junior year in a wheelchair, but she was pretty lucky, and I think she healed up okay. A guy I know robbed a bank with a note saying something along the lines of "put the money in the bag." Was released on bond within a few weeks. Went back to the same bank with another note and robbed it again. I think he got 35 years. Multiple instances comprised of multiple minutes each. But yeah, I honestly think some people just like prison. That has to be it in this case. The man that killed my grandfather had never so much as had a speeding ticket. He was married with kids and fell behind on rent. My grandfather that was in his 80s worked for the company that rented this guy his home for extra money. Grandpa couldn't reach him about his rent, so went and did a welfare check. The guy panicked and murdered my grandfather. Destroyed more than one life in a matter of 30 seconds. Good God, just why? I was just reading about a group of people who dined and dashed on their $100 bill and then ran over the server, who wasn't even trying to stop them but was taking down their license plate. She died. Just like who escalates like that. 4 people couldn't come up with $100, so they killed a 22-year-old. People are nuts. The 17-year-old girl that was driving 105 miles per hour down a dark desert road at 6:35 am. Next week will have been 3 years since it happened. She hit me head on, and that was it for her. I drive past her memorial on the side of the road every day, and I think about how someone with so much ahead of them could lose everything due to one bad decision. I lost my teeth that day, but she lost a whole lot more. I hope her family is doing well. This is probably a tough time for them. I'm shocked you came out of a 105 miles per hour head-on collision only losing your teeth. And the lifelong haunting thoughts. I don't imagine how you or her family would ever fully move on from that. Well, it was a bit more than just my teeth. I have 16 metal plates in my face, rods in both legs, a screw all the way across my pelvis, a partially fused ankle, and had 2 rods in my back that were later removed. I also lost a classic pickup truck, 1975 Chevy K20, that I had saved a long time to get. Unfortunately, I was an idiot who only had it insured for a quarter of its value. I won't be making the same mistake when I finish restoring my dad's 70 C10, though I hope nothing ever happens to it, as the sentimental value makes it irreplaceable. The teeth are the most noticeable part. If you were to see me, other than one foot being rotated outward and walking with a slight limp, the other injuries aren't very visible. My beard covers most of the face scars. My buddy was driving too fast on a wet road, lost control, and hit a tree, killing his best friend in the process. It ruined him. Sounds exactly like what happened to my friend nearby Weatherford. TX. Drunk and raining was driving, hit a tree and killed passenger. Kid I went to high school with wasn't going to graduate and decided to protest by speeding and doing wheelies on the road in front of the school. On his 3rd round, he passes a pickup truck, hooks his leg on the bumper, and is thrown from the bike right on his head, snapping his neck. School posthumously graduated him. Edited to help clear up questions. Happened in 1995 on the northern Illinois/southern Wisconsin border. I noticed his intelligence has been questioned. Let me share an additional anecdote. His nickname was Bob. When asked what it was backwards, he replied without guile or irony that it was oob. Whether you agree with the school's action in graduating him or not, locally it was considered window dressing, as the whole town knew of what happened within hours of his accident.